everyone, and welcome back to our Ellipse Unsealed podcast. Today we have with us two special guests rather than just a normal one, so you guys are in for a treat today. We have with us David from Jacob Stern and Mikko from Dooap. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Savannah.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, definitely. To kind of get kick-started off, David, do you want to begin by telling us a little bit about Jacob Stern and what you do there and what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the CFO of Jacob Stern & Sons, and Jacob Stern & Sons is a 167-year-old privately held organization.
Wow.
It's quite a blessing to be part of a company that has such a long-standing history. And the organization consists of three separate businesses. One of the businesses is called Acme Hardesty, which operates out of Pennsylvania. Acme Hardesty is a oleochemical distributor. So you get all the time, what are oleochemicals? Oleochemicals are chemical compounds derived from natural oils and fats. So we specialize, or Acme specializes in the importation and distribution of castor oil and palm oil and its derivative products. So just so you can wrap your head around, well, what does that mean in your daily lives? Castor oil and palm oil go into things such as cosmetics and hand sanitizers, to just name a few of the many products which these oleochemicals go into. One of our other businesses is JST Global, which is a joint venture between Tyson Foods and ourselves at Jacob Stern & Sons. JST Global specializes in animal fats, or tallow, which sells into the renewable diesel market space, as well as other markets and industries such as animal feeds. And then finally, our third operation is a private plane chartering business, which operates out of California. So overall, our geographical footprint for our business is quite expansive. And so we really had to engage in a wide digital transformation in order for us to stay competitive, which is one of the reasons, which is why I joined Jacob Stern & Sons, but also which is one of the reasons that we were led to Dooap and Mikko, and to partner with them to strategically align on how to engage in an AP automation process.
Wow. A couple of quick questions. Is it still family, like generationally owned? That 167 years is still some lineage there?
Yeah. Yes, it is. So awesome. It is still owned. There's a single owner, and his name is Phil Bernstein. And ultimately, it's quite a difference from my previous experiences being in public companies to now work for a single owner who's still extremely engaged, which is, it's pretty amazing.
That's pretty unique. Yeah. And the second thing I know oleo because it's a crossword clue all the time. Like that's why I first learned that. Now I know what it is, but 20 years ago, like it came up at a crossword as a fat alternative or something with 4 letters. Like, I don't know. And then you learn it's oleo, and then now it crops up all the time. It's a big crossword clue.
That's hilarious. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, it's like there's that and Oreo, oleo and Oreo, for whatever, because all the vowels, I think, you get stuck, that they're always in crosswords. Cool. You mentioned your transformation. Let's turn it over to Mikko. Just a quick introduction about Dooap and what you guys do and how you kind of came to work with Jacob Stern.
Thanks, Bobby. And maybe just first a little bit of a background. So we haven't been around for 167 years. So it's rather 8 years that we've been around. So what Dooap does is AP automation for Dynamics 365 F&O clients. So we're very focused to that niche area of clients. And of course, what that means is that we know the ERP system, we know the client's processes, and I think how we actually got together with David was also through you guys at Ellipse. So we work a lot through partners, and we tend to get referred because usually we're really good at delivering our solutions and also value to our clients. Yeah, and maybe just sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, and maybe just in terms of quickly the benefits of API automation, I just want to highlight it would be really saving time and visibility and control to the operations. And maybe that is something that we can get back to later on in the podcast.
You bet. Yep. And you'll be joining us. I mean, like you said, you've been a great partner. It's a great company. You'll join us later this year at our Tech Connect, which is something Ellipse puts on once a year to provide technical education. So different than some of the other user group events you might see out there. We've been doing this internally for years and made it more of an outward facing thing for folks learning, technical side of Dynamics 365 Finance and Ops and CE. So Doop's the sponsor with us there, and happy to have you on. Let's talk about, David, when did you realize you needed accounts payable automation? Like, what was the impetus when you were looking at, your key findings inside of your organization that said, hey, this is where we need to go, and how did that kind of come about?
Absolutely. So my prior organization, I had implemented an API automation tool back in 2014. And so I knew the value of the API automation tool and the necessity to streamline the back office function of the organization. So when I came over to Jacob Stern and Sons, as mentioned, being a 167-year-old organization, we didn't have many of those tools in use. And so I had to look at what were the tools which I wanted to implement, and which ones could I implement the most efficiently or most quickly. And so within the AP space, we looked at various vendors to assess who can be the best partner of ours and implement with speed and have that sense of control. And so that is what has led us to implement AP automation as one of the first initiatives of our digital transformation.
Did you have a strong ROI? I mean, you're kind of that top level, and you kind of bought in, which is nice. I mean, when you've got that kind of executive sponsorship right out of the gate, I come from an IT background where I had to sometimes work up to that executive sponsorship and get people on board to see the value. You kind of had that already built in. Did you have to sell it down, or was it pretty easy for you to sell out to the company the ROI and implementing something like this?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. So there's some intangibles in regard to that ROI question on freeing up not only the back office but also the various departments. So when selling it, you're really talking about, well, how do I communicate how streamline a tool as an AP automation tool or Doop's tool, how is that going to benefit not just the back office as well as the entire organization? Then when you talk about a dollar ROI, the beauty of Mikko and Doop's tool is it's not overly expensive. So when you look at that ROI from a dollar figure, you can quickly make sense of why you would implement such a tool with your organization.
Cool. Mikko, you've been doing this a while. I want to make sure I heard that right. You said 8 years or 80 years? Just double checking.
8 years.
Okay, cool. You obviously are really active. You've written a blog recently that I wanted to bring up about AP automation and data and analytics. You want to talk a little bit about that and kind of just give us some key points around, why this is not just about automating, the process, but it's also about good data and about the kind of the side piece of that.
And maybe just to go back to what I said earlier about the visibility and control, because I think one of the problems that many companies face is that you just don't have data correct. And I think AP automation is one of the core processes, or AP rather, that you need to get that right from the source. After that, you can actually focus on reporting and analytics. And I think that was something when I used to be a CFO in the past that I put a lot of focus, exactly what David was saying, kind of fixing the processes. And after that, I would presume that would, David, give you a lot of better access to all the data, and also taking that into your reporting systems, and also speeding the whole reporting process. And I think data as such is also in the core of all the AI and machine learning, because I mean, if you don't have the source data correct. Of course, it's a bit difficult to make any judgments based on the data. So I think kind of analyzing and putting data on the reports and building something on that is pretty straightforward nowadays. But what is more complicated is actually making sure that the data is correct at the source, and you actually have fast access to whatever you need to have access to.
Yeah, I mean, data is important.
A little bit to that, with the access to the data and information, the prior tools which I had used from an AP automation space didn't have this added benefit which Dooap had. So us as an organization, being a Microsoft Suite organization, we utilize Power BI. So that extra benefit that Dooap provided with a Power BI report set was very welcome to myself as well as my team members. And it's something where I'm quickly able to identify where there's workflow issues or there's bottlenecks in regard to the workflow and approval process, or I'm quickly able to assess, are we not paying our vendors on terms, which ultimately means, are we not deploying our working capital appropriately? So that added benefit is something that I hadn't seen in regard to an AP automation tool. So, I was very grateful for that implementation and or offering from Dooap.
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. Were there any other factors that Dooap offered that stood out to you, or other than the Power BI that you chose Dooap for?
Yeah. So overall, when we're looking at a AP automation tool, we're looking for a simple design. We're looking for a intuitive build, and with Dooap, it ultimately provided both of those in a very clean fashion. One of the other benefits that led us to Dooap is the API connection with D365, and ultimately it's seamless. So when an invoice goes into Dooap and ultimately goes through the workflow and gets approved, I mean, it's almost instant when the invoice then is fed into D365. So it drives a significant amount of efficiencies on the back end. So those are just some of the added reasons that we chose to partner with Dooap.
And just from a technical clarification, anybody listening, integrated as opposed to some type of API or other backend data flow situation where, hey, something happens in accounts payable software, then either it has to go through an API call to get back to your financial system, or it's going through some other data transformation. This is a direct integration, which, like you said, makes for that instant kind of flow. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I'll have to defer to Mikko on what the actual technical term is in regard to what their connection is. But I would say that however it is built in a very seamless way.
Yeah, and thanks, David, for bringing that up. So I think this is an interesting topic because some of our prospects, they don't really believe that our integration is seamless and it works. And I just want to kind of highlight there that all of our 100 clients, they are running exactly the same version of the integration package that we deploy into Dynamics 365. It takes around 2 to 3 hours to deploy, and then we're connected. So by no means is implementing Dooap an integration project, but that is actually our responsibility, and we make sure that it works.
Yeah, that's another great point. The time to integration it sounds like it's really short. So that's a key benefit in bringing an ISV product on, or any type of project, is how fast can we get up and running, and that builds into that ROI process as well, and that adoption process of a software, like you said, for you, David, that works seamlessly. And that sounds like Mikko's doing his job over there.
Trying to.
Yeah. The team that was provided to us in order to implement this project, I mean, it was a very structured process, and everybody on this call, as well as those that are listening, we've all had experiences with service providers and partners who don't have a strong onboarding process and a strong support system, and that ultimately leads to just challenges with the adoption within your organization and or the ultimate failure of your rollout, and we don't want that to happen. So Dooap and the Dooap team made that process of the onboarding and go live very efficient and pleasant. I mean, it wasn't difficult for us.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah.
Kind of rolling into the next subject, with AP automation, you kind of get full transparency, which kind of decreases the chances against fraud. Do you guys want to talk about that and the features within that with risk mitigation?
Yeah, Mikko, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Thanks, David. I'll go first. So maybe kind of, I think we're all very familiar with fraud, and we see that in our private lives a lot. I mean, I think there isn't really a call nowadays that wouldn't be a scam or something like that.
Got two of us since we've been online here. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that is happening more and more in business too. And I think it's been there, but I think during the past years, it's been increasing a lot. And I think what kind of fraud detection and kind of prevention for us means that we try to detect patterns. So just to keep it simple, let's say that we see that remit to address has changed. There's a new account number on the invoice, if there happens to be one, or kind of the invoice usually we get from a vendor is 1,000, now it's 10,000. So things like that. So I think that everybody needs to pay attention to that. And of course, that is something that we have working in the background in the system. And of course, we know that it may be an exception that is for real, but I think what we just want to do is to highlight those to the users that maybe you should take a look at this, because it seems that this is not a pattern that we've seen before. So I think that is probably it in short. And we've actually had clients that have faced significant, or they were about to face significant financial loss because of this, but then they were actually able to kind of pinpoint in Dooap that there's an issue here. And of course, just going back to the ROI, probably the cost that you would pay for AP automation tool is a fraction of the amount that you would pay if you were kind of a victim of some sort of high-scale fraud.
Yeah, it's a great example of because you think about that when because we do internally we get these security trainings where they're testing us. They send emails that are meant to trick you into trying to respond, and a lot of times what they do is they're not constructed well. Like you said, there's anomalies within the email that make it make it seem like it could be a fraud. And what I'm hearing is you can see that, or you're looking at that kind of that data and that kind of information within your process. Hey, this invoice, there's a lot of mistakes and misspellings or whatever it is that different than what you would normally receive from this company. Let's just set this one aside. It's not going into the ether somewhere. We're going to set it aside and let David look at it and make sure that, yeah, this is valid before we send it on through the system and into the machine to help avoid that kind of fraud activity.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to what do you want to do, or how do you want to manage your invoices, or what do you want to avoid? You want to avoid paying duplicate invoices. Now, that's not fraud, but it's duplication. The system will identify that for you instantly. So you're minimizing how much cash outflow you have when it's not necessary. You also, this isn't related to fraud, but you don't want to miss payments either. So in a manual nature, the invoices aren't in one central repository, which are easy to access to see what hasn't been paid yet. Versus, within Dooap, the data is transferred over to D365. We ultimately transact the payment, and then the payment information goes back. So there's a certain level of control that the system or the tool that has been developed allows us to ensure that we're not sending out payments when we shouldn't be sending out those payments, and or missing payments. When it comes to the fraud space, as you guys both had identified, I mean, it's rampant these days, especially with AI. And so the more confidence you can have in your workflow structure, and ensuring that there's the proper checks and balances without slowing down the process or substantially slowing down the process is where someone like me, where I sit, can have confidence in what our overall structure is with our AP automation flow.
Yeah. I mean, because like you said, normally, if without some type of AP automation, you could have a manual interaction where somebody pays something that is either, it's a fraudulent invoice that they just are not aware of. And with the automation piece, you're kind of creating this light on it, in the moment to say, hey, we're not expecting an invoice, or this is not matching up, or whatever the reason. You're just kind of taking out, that element that might allow something to get through, which, yeah, makes complete sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's an area that we continue building on. And I also want to mention security overall, because I think that is a very important thing in the software tools and all other tools for that matter nowadays. And kind of those two are areas that we're focusing on too, because you need to rely on all the tools that you're using.
Yep. Let's talk about other operational. Oh, go ahead, real quick. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to build on that, when it comes to the security of or the IT security that our internal team looks to implement, and or the requirements of a software which we're going to implement within our organization, it's critical that there's single sign-on. Within Dooap, there is the single sign-on, so that avoids the opportunity for bad actors to come into the system, as well as the SOC 2 compliance and all that stuff. I mean, it's critical that our service providers comply with those items, which Dooap does, which has allowed us to implement our tool.
Cool. That's a great add. Yeah. I mean, it's single sign up. It's easier for your company, as well as the security side. So that's a great benefit. What other operational performances, upgrades, or what have you gained, from maybe like month end closing, or just that, the fact that this is all being automated? Anything else, subsequently that's improved in your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's approved across the entire work stream when it comes to paying vendors. There's a high level of self-service that the enterprise can actually go and engage in when they're trying to understand, has an invoice been approved, has an invoice been paid. So that's a huge benefit across the business. We've reduced the burden of the AP or invoice approving process. We haven't eliminated the burden of it, because we still have to have our department owners and vendor owners approve the invoices. But when the department's heads can approve those invoices in a much more simplistic way, meaning through the Dooap interface, the web interface, and or the application on their phone, it makes that burden less burdensome. But with the month-end process, as mentioned earlier, our invoicing was really backloaded. So ultimately, when it came to month end, there was a delay that we would ultimately realize because we were waiting for all the invoices to be manually input into the system. So that ultimately would delay our process. And then what it would cause is our team members to go chase invoices which haven't been loaded, and they didn't have visibility to where those invoices were. So now we've eliminated all of those things. There is not the backloading of invoices. So what can our staff do? Either close the books a lot quicker and focus on doing analysis on the month-end results versus chasing invoices and missing expenses. So it's helped out in that realm significantly.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I worked for a company that did exactly that. Every month end was like, month end's coming up. Everybody's, heads are down because they know they're gonna have to spend, hours, maybe days tracing down, not just, but matching, we don't have backup for this invoice. This isn't matching. We've got to go find all this information. And so your month, like you said, your month end close drags on. You're spending, extra hours after, your work time trying to get the books closed on time at month end to do some of the closing. And so if it takes away that, like I said, it's not just the time, but it's a person, it's their quality of work life is improved, which is awesome, to give an employee that kind of, freedom to not have to worry at the end of the month, like typically I remember,
Yeah, maybe just to comment something that David said also earlier about the ROI and the intangibles there. I think that what folks overlook at times is that you're actually saving time for the approvers and reviewers too when you're using an AP automation tool. It is not just AP, but actually all the other people in the organization who approve and review the invoices. So I think that is something that you would need to take into account too when considering AP automation.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very cool. Have you noticed like a difference in employee morale or anything like that? Like Bobby said, people not maybe so dreading the end of the month, or big changes within that?
Yeah, so I mean, let's call it what it is. The accounts payable process is not a sexy process. So, it's how do you ultimately make it more enjoyable, and while still implementing the controls that are necessary so that you're managing your AP structure in a prudent way. I wouldn't say that there's higher morale, but I would definitely say that I've had various executive team members say how much they've enjoyed the new process and using the tool because it is very simple for them. It allows them to actually review the invoice in a way that meets their needs, meaning it's on the screen. They can zoom into it. They can write on the invoice if they wanted to with a digital pen. They can send comments in. So it just makes the process much more palatable for the invoice approvers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything else to add as far as functionality or just in overall, just the process in which Dooap goes about, working with a customer like Jacob Stern to make sure they're satisfied?
Well, I think David kind of said it all, and I think in the end, AP automation, I don't know if I should be saying this, but it's kind of a bit boring process, but it needs to be running in the background. And of course, we want to make it as simple as possible. And I don't really want to go into the kind of one-off features of the product, but I think the guiding principle for us has always been that the look and feel of the tool needs to be nice. There can't be any unnecessary clicks, and then we try to automate as much as we can. But then again, keeping in mind that there are always the controls and approvals that need to be in place in a product like this.
Yeah, that's a key point. If the look and feel, if it looks and feels right and it's easy to use, it's a win for the organization and for your employees. Because that's the number one thing they're worried about is like, is this going to create more clicks? Is it more work? What am I getting here? I did a lot of programming in my previous life, and that's graphical user interface is such a big thing, and you've got to pay such a big attention to that.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting, I mean, because with Dooap being, I think you said 8 years old, Mikko, it's not, I don't want to say this as a negative, but Dooap isn't the largest player in the game. But what's interesting for me is having implemented several products so far within our organization, Dooap is one of these products there where it's not clunky, or I don't get negative feedback from the organization. And in fact, one of our other service partners, which we've implemented their product, I get constant negative feedback, and they are one of the leaders in the space. So it's kind of funny how if you want to call it smaller software provider is more nimble and more beneficial to an organization versus the large Goliath, which ultimately their structure is one way. They can't adjust it to meet our specific needs, and then it becomes more clunky on the user end.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think we want to keep it that way also, kind of in terms of the whole implementation process. I mean, when we're adding a lot more clients, we're always thinking that how can we automate internally too? So always getting the client experience better. That being said, I think that I'm very proud of our implementation team, because the services team is really the thing that makes it work. And our clients, like you, David, they are very happy with the way that you're being treated during the implementation project. So that is kind of in the core of our values too.
Yeah, sometimes bigger is not always better in cases like that. So that's a very good point to be made.
We try to keep it that way, even though, of course, every company wants to grow, but
right,
you still want to keep the core of your DNA when you're growing.
Yes, definitely. Kind of wrapping up here, leading into the future of AP automation, do you guys have any ideas of how to kind of expand the ideas of it, or what you think might happen, especially with artificial intelligence kind of ramping up within the past year? What do you guys kind of think that'll look like in the future?
Yeah, maybe if I go first, so I think AI is the thing nowadays, and I think one way or the other we had that in AP automation for quite a long time. I mean, maybe it wasn't that intelligent, but it's been around. I think the thing with financial software overall is that you would need to get things 100% right in the end, and kind of generative AI is something that can actually make mistakes, and it's not that you just have a general assumption of something, but you actually need to get it right. So I think that is just a word of caution there, that there are a lot of use cases where we're going to apply AI machine learning techniques, but at the same time we actually got to make sure that what we're doing gives the results that our clients want to have. So I'd say that in terms of the tool and the features, we're pretty far, but there are things like, let's say, real-time guidance to the user, what you should be doing if you have an error like this, or if there's a PO mismatch and stuff like that. I think there AI can be very helpful, but I say still that we want to get it 100% right, and with AI, at least with the current models, you just can't get there. I mean, if someone's telling otherwise, I don't think that they are telling the truth, but I think that, yeah, it's gonna change a lot of things, but with the caveat that it can change everything, and there are areas where we still need to make sure that things are 100% correct.
Yeah, those are good points. AI is a tool. It hopefully should always remain a tool. It's something that we're relying on to help improve our lives, but not run our lives in a way that we're not paying attention. And like you said, accounts payable automation really is the kind of the precursor to AI. It was doing this. It's bringing it's automating. It's making intelligent decisions for a long time. Previous to this boon in AI in the last year or so.
Yeah, the one thing I could see it in the space of specifically AP automation is if within the tool, when an invoice comes in, that it can't be through the OCR recognition, it can't identify what workflow it should go on, and or it's a new vendor, that maybe the tool can provide suggestions through past history with a vendor with a certain types of characteristics, and or invoice with a certain type of characteristics. Maybe it should go on this sort of workflow, or here are some things that you should check in order to ensure that it is not fraudulent, or you're not susceptible to fraud. But when it comes to actually the how it gets put into play, of course, that's Mikko and his world, since that's not my I guess my realm.
But that's a great point. I mean, like you said, you've got a vendor A, and maybe every invoice flows perfectly except for this one product or one thing that every time that comes in, the first time it was a big mess and you had to do a bunch of stuff, and now you've learned that, you've got that documentation in your system. The next time an invoice like that comes through, you immediately flag it and says, hey, when this type of invoice comes through, we know we've got to send it to David first. He's got to do some stuff. He's going to reach out directly because they've got to do a second thing, and then we can put it back in the system. And so again, keeping that flow going fast and efficient is a great side use of data in your financial system and CE, wherever you're pulling that data from, that's going to sidecar to the actual process.
Yeah, and one thing I agree. one thing that can be, one thing that the Dooap team can think through is, well, how can we integrate new methodologies and new technologies into the tool in order to help with that validation process, where our old way to validate the authenticity or validity of our vendors are no longer possible with deepfake speech generation, deepfake video generation, and like you said earlier, just the basic email generation. How could within the actual tool we implement technologies which can help out with the fraud, whether it's using AI or not?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and we have some ideas, but I think we're running towards the end of the podcast, so we need to leave that maybe to the next spot. Very, very good point, and I think that is something that, like, let's say that you could verify that this invoice is for real, this vendor is for real, like 100% every time. That would make everybody's life a lot easier, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah.
It's for the future.
Cool, but a lot of fun things to think about. Yeah, a lot of fun things to think about.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I think we're kind of closing out on all the topics we wanted to hit. Bobby, did you have any final thoughts or anything for these two? Oh, I think Bobby might be lagging.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate Mikko. Like I said, yep. It feels like I am lagging in life in general. It's getting so close to the weekend. The lag starts to kick in on Thursday instead of Friday. And it affects my internet, apparently. That's the kind of personality I have. It just emanates all the way straight through to my internet.
You got strong.
No, I appreciate having you. Yeah, seriously. Appreciate having Dooap on, a great partner, and Jacob Stern, also a great partner of Ellipse. Both of y'all, appreciate having you here to talk about AP automation, and look forward to seeing you soon at some event. I'm traveling around to all the events, so hopefully I'll see you guys somewhere.
Looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thanks for having us. Great meeting you guys.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Savannah.
Joining. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.